going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Happy New Year. It is the first video of 2023 and it's very fitting that we're kicking off with something that I wanted to get finished last year. So this week I'm going to be making a gingerbread demon girl along with a little gingerbread house for her to sit in. And it is very fitting that there is a demonic theme for this video because I was in hell. Glitter hell, more specifically, for a vast majority of this project, but you know what? I made it out on the other side, and I'm alive, and let's just see what I did, shall we? Our candidate for this makeover is this cave club gal that I actually prepped some time ago and just never got around to doing anything with her. I'm not sure who she is. I think she's the fortune teller one. And to get started, I am making the base for her horns. And to do that, I'm taking a couple pieces of jewelry wire and wrapping it around itself. That way it has a better chance of the clay adhering and not slipping and sliding around and being annoying when I get to that step. Once I have the wire prepped and ready to go, I use an X-Acto knife to open up the holes in her head just to make it easier to stab the wire through. I would typically use like a big embroidery needle to make the holes, but it turned out to not be quite big enough for this purpose. And at this stage, she looks kind of like a little bug with antenna, which is kind of cute, but she's not staying that way for long, because now I'm adding the clay and getting her horns all shaped out how I want them. Because I'm using an air dry paper clay for this process, there's only so much of the shape that I could build up in a single pass, so I have to sort of work in layers and wait for things to dry in between. So I did my first pass, and once that was completely dry, I'm going in with a second layer to sort of beef everything up and get more of the actual shape that I am looking for. And in this stage, I like to sort of make things a little bit chunkier than I want them to be because I'm going to be doing a lot of sanding to get things like symmetrical and smoothed out once everything is dry. Once both horns are sculpted and dry, I can go in with my various implements to start sanding down the material. So I use sandpaper and nail files and just anything to get in all like the nooks and crannies, especially for a curved shape like this. It's important to be able to get into tight spaces. So I cut this nail file in half to really help with that. I did my best to hold the horn still while I was filing everything down because they didn't really adhere to the head very well, but I'm going to be rectifying that here shortly. I just go through with a wet paper towel to wipe off all of the, extra clay residue and, sanding shavings. And once all the debris has been cleared, I can go in around the horns with a thick layer of Mod Podge to keep everything held in place. And once that's all dry, I can go in with acrylic paint for her face up. I sort of bounce back and forth between working on her horns and working on her face, that way things have time to dry in between. And for her face up, I kept things pretty straightforward and simple. It's got Christmas colors, she's got green eyeshadow, she's got red eyeshadow, wow, revolutionary, groundbreaking, red and green for Christmas? Who would have ever thought? I also go in with a black winged eyeliner to help frame her eyeballs a little bit. For her eyes, I decided to go with red because green was her primary eyeshadow color to help, balance it out. And I also went in with red for her lips as well as her eyebrows. I decided to give her a slit pupil to sort of contribute to that devilish appearance. For this first horn, I decided to paint this red peppermint stripe up along the whole thing. I originally had even more ambitious plans. You know those candy canes that have like the extra green stripe? Going along, it's like, oh, that'd be really cute. Well, I quickly realized after painting this first stripe that,
there was not more stripe painting in my future. There was a lot of rotating this bald, naked gal around on my desk and just going around and around and trying to get something kind of consistent. And it was really hard. It was really hard, but you know what? Oh wow, it was so hard that I decided to not do it on the second horn and instead just paint the whole thing red and do little dots instead. And you know what? In the end, I really think this asymmetrical look is super cute. So sometimes laziness leads to innovation, and it's a beautiful thing. It's giving very, like, mismatched socks energy, you know? Like, I can picture an elf wearing socks with these two patterns on it, and I'm kind of living for it. Once all the paint is dry, I can go in with chalk pastel to blush and shade her face. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to take this time to say, if you like this video, consider liking it. That really helps me out. If you want to see more videos like this, you know, more doll videos, more art videos with like a little spooky, edgy twist, consider subscribing to my channel. I just hit 800 subscribers while I was, you know, getting this video together, and you know, I might be on the road to 1K soon, and so if you want to help me get there, I would really appreciate it. So I hope to see you guys next time. I'm not done with the video yet. I just get sheepish when I do my calls to action, but I'm almost done blushing, so I don't have to vamp anymore. Ooh, look at that. It's catchlight time. Add the little shines to her eyes, and once that paint is dry, I can go in with a few layers of liquid sealant to keep everything in place. And to seal her horns, I go in with a very thick coat of Mod Podge straight out of the container, and I'm spraying that out with my fingers just because, I don't know, I feel like it gets smoother when I do it that way than when I use a brush. I cannot stop myself from sticking my hands in Mod Podge. And after all of that is dry, I'm going in with the most exciting step, which is using this white puffy paint to add sort of like a whipped cream base to her horns to sort of look like they're stuck on with icing as opposed to like naturally growing out of her head. And I am obsessed with how these came out. I think it is so cute, so festive, and it's probably my favorite thing I've ever done with a demon doll. I've made many at this point, and I'm just so stoked on this idea. I think it's so adorable. And 4 hours later, after all of that puffy paint is finally dry, I can make her outfit. And I keep it really very simple this time. I'm going around with this white chiffon fabric that I got for a different project, and I'm just sort of like loosely pleating and wrapping that around her waist, and it's like going around for as long as this strip of fabric will allow me to make her skirt. With the length of the fabric that I use, I really got like 2 or 3 layers of fabric to sort of wrap around her, and that really helped with the sheerness of this fabric and sort of prevent you from being able to just see her naked plastic body underneath, which wasn't really the vibe that I wanted for her. Once I'm done with that, I just sort of trim off the excess and fold over anything else to just sort of finish off the top. And it doesn't really matter how it looks because I'm going over with this sort of medium thickness pink ribbon because it happened to be what I had lying around. But I'm just sort of wrapping that around using several strips to sort of create a little bit of this like wrapped bodice. And it doesn't super matter what color this is because I'm going to be going over this with a metric hecton of glitter. So I truly use that to cover a multitude of sins in this project, and that's just the beginning. But I also went around her neck a couple of times with this ribbon because It kind of served a dual purpose because I sort of messed up on the first one, and also it helped thicken out her neck a little bit because I really feel like these Cave Club girls have like the most freakishly skinny necks I have ever seen on a doll. I'm not super into it, but the wrap helped. I also added a couple to her arms to help make it look a little bit more complete. One thing about me, you'll probably notice as a recurring thing in my project, is I'm gonna wrap some ribbon around some doll arms. It's just such a quick and easy way to like fill up a space that would look empty otherwise. And now we enter my first foray into glitter hell. I've mentioned it quite a few times, but it begins. So I decided to cover this bad boy in some fine red glitter that I had a whole bunch left over from a project I did literal years ago now. And I've just added that to her armbands, to her bodice, as well as her little neck band. The neck was probably the hardest part because I was trying desperately not to get glue all up on her face. It doesn't help that I don't have any normal glue. I just have jarred Mod Podge, so I'm really having to freestyle the glue application on this. But you know what? I think it worked out in the end. Once that's all dry and no longer absolutely hemorrhaging glitter everywhere, I start preparing her hair. So I'm using this red yarn that has like a strip of tinsel running through it to help, keep on with that shiny, glittery motif. And I was going back and forth on how I want to prepare these strands, if I want to keep them whole or separate them, and I decided to split them down into single and double stranded pieces to make her little hair strands. It can be a little bit more tedious than preparing hair wefts, but I think it's a really cute result. And once I finished preparing all those strands, I glued them down and just gave her a very simple, pushed away from the face hairstyle. I just thought it looked really cute keeping it down. So I did not show my process for making these shoes, their foam and ribbon. I didn't know what I was doing. I truly just needed something to cover her massive feet because no shoes really work for her, and I just covered them in glitter like I've done everything else in this project that I don't know what to do with. Okay, so this is like a really random step that I wasn't really sure where to put into the video, but I made these little embellishments out of just dollops of hot glue that I covered in glitter while they were still like hot, and I want to say wet, but like hot glue isn't really wet, it's just like melted while they were still melted. And I just used those in various points in this project. I used a couple of really tiny ones to add to these little bracelets that I made out of red ribbon, just to bring some, interest to her wrists. I also made this little shawl for her off camera that's truly just a U that I cut out of this white faux fur fabric. I was running out of time on this project, so if I had some more time I probably would have put a lining so you can't see the bottom, but I think it still looks cute either way. I had a little bit of hairspray off camera to help keep the fur in place. Now we can go back in time to when I started working on her little gingerbread house. And for the construction of this, I didn't super know what I was doing, so I don't go very in depth because I do not want to give you information that may in fact not actually be that helpful. And also the materials that I'm using are very specific because this is the backing for a cube shelf organizer that my mother-in-law got me for Christmas. So it already had this centerfold in it that I helped use in the construction of this. So I don't want to give you information that is not gonna be universally helpful at all. And I made this little base out of these thick, chunky pieces of cardboard because I'm obsessed with these things. I love thick, chunky pieces of cardboard. I see them and I'm like, wow, I can make something with these. And then I never do. But you know what? I did today. And I still have so much left over that I refuse to throw away. But you know what? I'm sure I'll make the mistake of trying to make more little houses like this in the future. I also had the bright idea of making this thing openable because I was like, oh wow, she can sit inside of it. That'd be so cool. So I only glued on the roof on the back, 3/3 of the house and left the front open. And I'm adding these little drips along the sides with hot glue to sort of mimic that icing look. And this is just a base that I'm going to be putting a bunch of different paint things over later, but having this foundation really helped. And I realized that if I wanted the front to hinge open, it would run into the front part of the roof. So I'm cutting that away to make it look like someone broke it off to eat it or whatever, since it's a gingerbread house and made out of food. This is a step that definitely becomes irrelevant later, but I glued down some fabric strips to the inside of the house all over to sort of give it a more finished look, so it didn't look just like flat cardboard in there, but I ended up doing something else with it that fully covers this, so just forget about this. And once the construction is finished, we can start with the really exciting stuff, which is the decorating. And so I am basing this out in a very fitting chestnut brown, chestnuts roasting on open fire, it's Christmas, and also this is the perfect gingerbread color. Well, things start getting a little less perfect in this next step. I got this very beautiful, what I thought was this white glittery, puffy paint. It's the only one that they had in this big of a bottle at the store that I went to. And I was like, this is perfect. I want this glittery feel. It's like snowy, it's like ice. And it looks beautiful right now. Like if it stays like this, oh boy, it would be gorgeous. But let's not think about the tragedy to come, and let's focus on how fun it was to pretend like I was icing a gingerbread house, because I didn't make a real gingerbread house this year, so this is the closest I got to that experience. I decided to give it these little, shingles that I think is very traditional in a house like this. I want it to be very traditional looking and not an expert baker made it. I want it to be like some demon made in their house, I'm adding these little windows on the side, and looking back, I really wish I had made these cutouts because it would have really made it a more dynamic look and I could have done cooler stuff with lighting, but hindsight is 2020. The thing about these puffy 3D paints is that they take a fairly long time to dry, so it was several hours before I realized that all the work I had just done was for naught, because look at how it dried. It's not in fact white, it was just clear glitter, but you know what? We have to persevere and move on. So to fix this, I went over all of that with white paint to get back that opaque icing look that it needs. And for the little wreath, I painted that green, which I was planning on doing anyway, but I just took this opportunity to do that. And the good news is that the 3D paint step wasn't all for nothing, because it did add a little bit of a raised texture to give it some more depth and dimension. And now I'm going over all the white spots again with Mod Podge to cover the whole thing in this sort of chunky, opalescent, iridescent glitter. And now that I'm done getting glitter all over my office, I am cutting out these sheets of aluminum foil so that I could wad them up and glue them along the side of the base. And my goal here is to make it look kind of like the house is sitting on a mound of snow. And so I am taking these white pieces of foam and I'm gluing them along, and I'm heating them up so that I can sort of form it to the shape of the aluminum foil the best I can. And if I had a heat gun, this would probably be easier, but I don't. So I was using a hairdryer, and I was also doing it on the lowest setting because my husband was asleep. But, it still worked out. I glued everything down the best I could and just smushed things around until I was kind of satisfied with it. Once I'm finished with the foam, it's time to add even more glitter. So in this case, I am using glitter glue to adhere even more of that white glitter that I used for the rest of the house. And boy, you guessed it, it got everywhere. I went back and forth on what I wanted to do with the wreath, but I decided that the gingerbread house looked a little bit too plain and normal for a demon gingerbread girl to have, so I decided to add a little pentagram out of ribbon to, you know, help tie it to the theme a little bit better. Because I struggled a little bit to get everything lined up, I'm adding these glitter embellishments to the 5 points to help cover up my mistakes. I also added one to the doorknob to help tie it all together. At this point, I still need to address how messy the inside looked, so I'm adding this ribbon that my mom got me in the Christmas box that she sent me this year, and it happened to be very perfect for this project, so I glued that to the porch as well as the inner panels. I also used that ribbon to line this shelf that I added to the inside in order to hold these little tea light candles that I got to make a more interesting lighting situation. I honestly wanted to do more to the inside of this house, but I was running very short on time, so I just added this little chair that I made a few years ago based on a tutorial that I found on Bentley House Minis that I will link in the description below. But it's done, baby. Even though I did struggle with this project, I do appreciate you guys going on this journey with me, and I am ultimately satisfied with how everything came out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you all next time. Love you, bye!